This is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Show. Right now, yes, I'm trying a new intro. I don't know because I'm so nuts about changing anything. We'll work on it. We'll get through it together. Also, the business end, which I always like to start with and get out of the way. As always, for Carolyn Kingan's poetry book, Before the Big Bang Makes a Sound. And it is great. And Before the Big Bang Makes a Sound is available to you at all Amazon and Barnes & Noble bookstores and a few Brooklyn-based bookstores as well. Yes, there are still some mom and pop bookstores left in this planet. It's amazing. But let's move forth. Also, I'd like to welcome Beware the Quiet Ones. It is a new podcast, Pennsylvania based. Beware the Quiet Ones. I'm giving them a shout out. Of course, as always, Murder at Bedtime with Lyndon, which is outstanding. His podcasts are just amazing. I'm going to have him on the show one day. We're going to do a mashup, but I have to figure out which one to mash up with. I don't even know if the next one that I'm doing today would be considered true crime. It depends on who you are, how you would look at this. Also, we have Grizzly Books. Always give a shout out to Grizzly Books, Grizzly_books. The information she has on Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, it's outstanding. Very, very good. So check out this podcast. Let's move because I don't want to, because it's my first time taping under all this new equipment. I want to make sure it's okay. Regardless, this is, I have things in the works, but today we're going to be talking about the death of Tyrone Taylor. Who is Tyrone Taylor, you ask? He was the husband of Keisha Jones, who they resided in West Philadelphia. Keisha Jones now what happened was she killed Tyrone Taylor. It was one night, they were driving home, and something horrible happened. So I'm going to take it from the beginning. Let's roll it from the top and go from there. I'll just tell the story because this story, to me, The Right Shoe is a podcast about all things strange and unusual. Now, especially in reference to a death, but also it focuses on the strange and unusual. Now, The Right Shoe is named because there has been a lot of famous cases that the one at Kurt Sova is a big one. It's a big unsolved mysteries case. Robert Stack Unsolved Mysteries. And can I preface this by saying that Bill Curtis is not the narrator of Forensic Files. It's Peter Thomas. I see this mistake glaringly in a lot of posts, and it drives me crazy. Peter Thomas was the narrator for Forensic Files, not Bill Curtis, who is fabulous in his own right, yes, but please. I see that all the time, and it makes me nuts. But, so there was a famous case about this guy named Kurt Sova who he was drunk, he wandered off, he was found dead, and his right shoe was never found. Well, same with the Eugene Cavett, and it was in that same ravine that Kurt Sova was found. So then the first podcast I ever did was about Matthew Larson, and he was a young man who was otherwise known as Pipus the Wise. He was out one night. I think he was going to the Kelpius Cave where he was to film a documentary there. He had just been paid some money from ABC Science, something about ABC, some sort of division of ABC, but he was given some nice amount of money to tape a documentary, and he chose Kelpius Cave, but he became obsessed with Kelpius Cave. And he actually died one night. They originally thought it was a homicide, but homicide went, and it wasn't a homicide. I just happened to be there at the time. People often ask me that, how do you know this? Because there was a lot of misinformation about the way he died. He did not he did not make it to Kelpie's Cave. He was at the Lemon Hill Mansion when he was on a bunch of shipping containers. He had gotten scared. You'd have to listen to, I can't tell the entire story again, but the point is he fell, and they thought it might have been a homicide when it was first called in. They turned out it was not a homicide, but they never found his right shoe. So that's why I named the right shoe. Let's go to the Keisha Jones case. This is the featured case of today. And yes, I'm going to weave in stories of my own with this Keisha Jones case because it's important. It really does fit with what I do have sympathy for Keisha Jones, an immense amount of sympathy, because I see myself in her and things that I did, stupid things that I did that fortunately I woke up from the next morning, and though I remembered it and thought to myself, oh my God, how am I going to look at people in the face? I behaved so irrationally. But, what happened this night, she couldn't just wake up and be embarrassed and have it go away. She got in trouble for this. But there's a lot of other things like the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and their legal system, which I'm not entirely sure why she was charged with certain things. So we'll get into that, all of that. Let's start out. Keisha Jones was born February 24th, 1981. She had been born to a woman, Allison Jones, and Allison Jones had her at a very young stage in her life. Allison Jones actually had her, I think she was 15, but she said because they were so close in age, they became best friends. Their relationship was tight as can be. They really, you could tell the love when the mom talks about her. I was actually watching a Snapped episode, and if you want to see that, it's quite an old one. It's from season 10. It's the Keisha Jones story. It's a shame because this does provide a lot of information. I just had to look up a lot of information about the court itself. There's a UJS portal that's literally the name, UJSportal.com. And that will take you to definitely Philadelphia, but I think any Philadelphia case, you can look up the court documents to that case through the UJS portal. See, this is going to pick up sirens from 90 blocks away. That's what I'm worried about, this microphone, because I got a lot of action out here. I'm trying to make this soundproof in here. So, Allison Jones, she's her mother, and they're very close. She was a wonderful person by all accounts, Keisha Jones. She grew up, she took care of her kids, she took care of her sisters, and I think it didn't really go, it just said she had siblings. The one was on the Snapped episode, but she was so much younger than her. So it seems like, but she said she was like our mom because her mom had to work and stuff. Kiara Allen is the sister of Keisha Jones. She was on there a lot, and she was a supporter of Keisha Jones because this was a heavily divided case. Keisha grew up with very close to her mom, and she was very close to her sisters. But at age 15 or 16, she did come home to her mom and say, look, I got pregnant. But it wasn't like, oh my God, you got pregnant. Because I feel like when it happens in a family at a young age for the mother, it does tend to have, unless that girl makes a conscious decision that she's not going to get pregnant early, it tends to repeat itself. But it's not necessarily a bad thing all the time, because in this instance, her mom was very happy that she was having the baby. So they all came together. It was just like a big happy family. James Hayes was her first husband. So they had the child together and they were going through the motions, of raising the child. Their relationship wasn't bad, but I think because they were so young, after a couple years, and it wasn't like they just got together. I mean, James Hayes seems like a really good guy. He was very defensive of his ex, said that what a good mother she was and how he can't believe this happened. So he was supportive of Keisha. He said that she had met Tyrone Taylor after they broke up, and he said he was actually a little jealous because their relationship was so good, hers and Taylor's, but they still all they all watched each other's kids. I believe James Hayes watched Tyrone Taylor's kids. They talked about disciplining the children together. There was no animosity. There was no hate. There was no foundation of anger there, which is another very, very important part to this case because of something that happens further down that really shocked me. And this really did not bode well for Keisha Jones. And I'm still surprised. One night in the police station, a call comes through, and I believe Joe Bamberski, one of the officers, got it. It came in kind of as a routine pedestrian hit at first. But when they arrived on the scene, what they saw was shocking. There was a woman down on her knees cradling this gentleman who, through all intents and purposes, was already passed away. But I don't think she realized that at the time. Obviously it turns out that the people in this image were Keisha Jones and Tyrone Taylor. The cops come and they figure, what happened? This looks, and I did go down there today. I took pictures of the corner. I took picture of exactly where, God rest in peace, Tyrone Taylor lost his life. I mean, that's dreadful. And I cannot imagine the family. They probably can't even stand these going over, because actually on that one TV episode, I did not see any of the Taylor family. But I get it. That's something you wouldn't want to relive. And that's rough. So she's screaming, and they go and they bring her in, and she says, her and her cousin Tamara Stanford was in the back when this all happened. Now, they ask both of them, they pull both of them in, and I don't think still at this point, Keisha knew that Tyrone had died, but he did. And she was a mess, and then Officer Bamberski had to tell her that he died as a result of his injuries of the SUV being driven at this point by Keisha had crushed him into a wall. And what she said was happening, they had gotten into a fight. They were at a bar that night. They came out, gotten into a fight. They were driving either home, or their home was in West Philly. They were in South Philly when this happened. It was the 2400 block of Morris Street. And that is that's a weird place. It literally, like, before you get to the location, there's almost like a long trestle. It's just one stop sign after another. It almost looks like you're under the L, but you're not under the L anymore. You're just under these. It's so confusing. It's a very difficult, because when you got to snake around these. I have pictures. I'll put on the website, therightshoepodcast.com, to show you just how confusing it is driving under these things, like these concrete structures, and then you have to veer off. And right as you veer off, there comes Morris Street, and she must have driven down. But I am still baffled by so many things, and the one part that baffles me is the little 1 second that her life was literally ruined. 1 second is all it takes. 1 second. That's why I picked this case to do. I just cannot get over in that split second. It just, everything changed. And I've been there. So this is what, I'm going to backtrack and tell you the whole story, but this is what's going on so far. She's in the police district. She's telling them that they were drinking and he was driving. Then he got out of the car, so she took the wheel. Her feet she had very high heels on. She's apparently not tall in stature. She's a short woman and she wears high heels, and her heels got stuck. And when she she put her foot on the gas instead of the brake, and they became entangled, and that's what happened. And she hit her husband, and he died. Now, the cops at first were like, okay, that sounds, the cousin corroborated this. Everything was dandy. And then came the camera. There was a camera. When we went down and just took a picture, there was 2 cameras, city cameras. I don't think those city cameras were there at the time, but there is a deli, and then there's another pizza joint, both in, it's right there. It's right in front of that wall, the little structure where she had hit Tyrone. So it was all right there in this little square. So that was all fine and good. They said that the stories were corroborating and all this, and she probably would have just got some sort of manslaughter under the influence. And there is another case that matches this. It was a case in Florida, and her name was Betty J. Fowler. She got DUI manslaughter. But man, I'll tell you, this case, I had to compare the two because they were very similar. They were out one night, they had gotten into a fight. Billy Joe Fowler and her brother and her sister-in-law went out. Teresa Fowler was killed when Betty Jo Fowler was behind the wheel. But in this instance, she had hit Teresa Fowler and her brother at the same time. Then she backed up and she went after Teresa Fowler. And this is in a video, and this video is far more brutal than the one of Keisha Jones, and yet she only got 12 years DUI manslaughter. So that was where, but see, that was Florida. I think PA, the way they charge people is a little different. So let's go into the actual crime. So we back up and they get these images on the camera, and it does show a horrifying incident. It shows them slow down. It shows Tyrone Taylor getting out of the car, and then it shows the car literally like making a hard, on the film, it would be a hard left, but the way she was coming, the car just swerves at a 90-degree angle, literally grabs Tyrone. He is on the hood, and then bam, it goes right into that wall, killing him instantly. And it is a horrific looking, that camera angle, they really got it, and it's disturbing. So you have to figure, well, then they got to bring her back and say, what happened? So they go in, they get Keisha Jones, and they get her cousin, Tamara Stanford. They question, again, like, what happened? Apparently that night, Keisha and Tamara Stanford, they went out to a bar, and they were going to meet up with Tyrone Taylor later on. Now, they were drinking. She did a lot of shots. He did a lot of shots. Their 2 lawyers were Richard DeCipio and Charles Peruto, both extremely competent attorneys. And both of them, even Bambursky, they nailed it. Like, what they think happened is, she got drunk. They got into a fight. It was like a crime of instant passion, so to speak. Because they got into the car, they were fighting from the get-go. there was, Tamara in the back seat said they were fighting because Tyrone accused her of flirting with this guy. There was some guy and she was talking to him. And there was a reporter who said that her exact words were, I was dealing with him and he was dealing with her, another girl. So they both had but they were drunk, they were flirting, but he accused her of cheating. So when they were in that car, she said, get the hell out of the car. And he said, okay, and he got out. Now, it brings me back to when I was in South Philly. I had a birthday party. Or not a birthday party. It was my birthday coming up. And at the time, I was young. I was seeing two different guys. And the one guy's name was Kenny. The other guy's name was Gene. They both bought me tickets to U2, both at different times, which was amazing. Went to the U2 concert with Gene, had a freaking fantastic time. Went to the concert with Kenny, had a horrible time. What happened was, when we were in the car, we got into some kind of fight. I was drunk, and I said, let me out here, and I got out of the car. But I didn't really want him to leave. He left me there in South Philly. And I had to find these two guys from Scranton to get a ride home that night. It was unbelievable. But that little tidbit is just to show you, yes, it does happen. You get out of the car and do stupid shit that you really don't plan on doing, or say things that, and I can imagine Keisha Jones saying to Tyrone, get out of the car, but not really wanting him to get out of the car, but he did. So, of course, in that state of mind, she's going to be furious, go after him. But in this instance, there was a wall. And now, even when I look at this video, it appears that you can see the car come up. You see him jump out of the car, and then you do see her swerving and picking him up with the car, and then he's on the hood of the car, and then bam, right into the wall. Now, the prosecutors are saying, oh, that shows premeditation on her part, that she wanted to kill him. But if she had truly gotten her feet tangled, it does actually look like the car just kind of was like jerked so quickly around that it caused it. But I don't know. When I did talk to Homicide about this case, they were like, nah, that's a clear-cut issue of first-degree murder. But I am with her attorneys on this, because DeCipio and Peruto, they both say this should have been a manslaughter case. And I am talking with my head, not my heart. If I was Tyrone Taylor's family, I would absolutely be furious and totally agree with what happened, because you want that person to pay. There's never me saying that the family of the victim is wrong, ever. I'm looking at this from purely a legal standpoint, in the fact that I can't believe in the state of Pennsylvania that not only did they charge her with first-degree murder and not DUI manslaughter, but I don't know if they have that again. That Betty Fowler case happened in Florida, and she only got 12 years. So I do believe that this was a case of manslaughter, but I guess they don't have that in the state of Pennsylvania, especially Philadelphia. Peruto, her lawyer, said the district attorney is always going to go for the throat with the first-degree murder, because they want you to plead down. And what they had given her access to was third-degree murder, which this is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. First-degree means you have the intent to kill the person. Third-degree murder means you had the intent to injure somebody, but it came out murder. Which I don't get. I'm telling you, this legal mumbo jumbo is why our courts are so messed up. Common sense doesn't prevail. It's what lawyer can make the most of any given thing, because that's ridiculous. I mean, come on. The third-degree murder thing. I just don't, whatever. That's what it means. It's third degree. It's intent to injure, but you wind up killing. So they offered her that. But she was like, no way. She had kids, and she said, to Scipio, Rich, I can't be away from my kids for 10 years. I won't see them. They won't have a mother. He said, I fully understood, and I brought forth to the jury, if you convict her of first-degree murder, which that was on the table because she refused to take the third-degree murder deal, which would have been 15, like 10, 15. She wouldn't take that. So when he said, I put forth to the jury, do you believe in your heart that she wanted him to die? That's her husband. It doesn't seem like they had this horrible relationship. And I never knew that premeditation in Pennsylvania I thought it meant planning. It doesn't. Premeditation is in that second you wanted that person to die. But who, when you're drunk and pissed off at your boyfriend who just got out of the car, who isn't wanting to kill that mother effer? That's what you think. I know me. If I was fighting with my man and we were driving home drunk one night and I said, get out of the car, and he got out of the car, I would flip. I would flip, but I don't know if I would stop the car and get out of the car. I don't know. I just, it happens. It happens. This, I know, was an accident, but it became so involved and it became so horrific because she killed him. And that is why this case grabbed me. It was 1 second and she ruined her life for one drunken decision. Her alcohol level was 0.110, which is, they said it was like a tenth over, I believe. I can never read those things properly. I know 0.8 is the legal limit. So this was like, they gave the quantitative analysis of it, but they did say, went over and over that they went over to see what your blood alcohol level means at this point, that point, the other point. And yes, she was in the zone where her motor skills were completely impaired. So that's why this case, I just don't understand to give that first degree murder. I mean, oh gosh, do you really think she intended to kill him? I'm just very surprised she did not get even the option of manslaughter. It's first degree or nothing. And she did not take the third degree deal. That kind of screwed it up. So they're in the courtroom. DeCipio said, I just knew it was going to be bad because of that tape. But there was something else that made it even worse. And that was her cousin who was in the car that night with them in the back seat. She testified for the prosecution. And that is heavy. That's a member of her family who, sitting in the back seat, saw what happened and apparently was so traumatized by what she saw that she went for the prosecution. So you have a family member testifying against you, and you have that tape, and that tape was brutal. And the lawyers knew. They said when they saw that tape, they just realized how bad it was. So they go to trial, and again, that's Tamara's right. And also, I even looked into the fact sometimes when there's somebody who has maybe a few priors, they'll grab them, the DA, and they'll say, hey, if you testify, we'll knock off some prior. There's all kind of deals made. Her cousin she was squeaky clean. She testified that's how she felt. That's bad. That means that, I'm trying to wrap my head around, okay, they're in the car. They're driving. She tells him to get out of the car, which he complies. He starts walking because his parents don't live too far. They're in South Philly. And she takes that car, and she says her feet got tangled and she tried to put her foot on the brake, but it was the gas. I'll be honest with you, it doesn't seem that far from the truth from what I can see, but I think the fact that he was on the hood of the car and then it smashed into that wall, it just looked terrible. The look was bad. And I don't think George could get past that fact or the fact that her cousin did testify against her. That is her right, and I don't, hey, I am not judge. I don't judge anybody ever. That there's two sides, and I would love to talk to her. I would love to talk to Keisha Jones. I would love to talk to Keisha Jones. So I just really would like to ask her a couple questions. Although I have to say, when I went onto that UJS portal, her lawyers didn't appeal. And it went through. It had to have gone through because it doesn't say life anymore. It said 15 to 30. So he had to have got that knocked down. It does not say life anymore in that UJS portal. So the appeal process did work. This is a shitty situation and that happened. This case scares me to death. Because I don't drink anymore at all. But just when I was younger, all the stuff I did, I think, things that I've done in the past never turned out this way. Because they easily could have, trust me. So she was scared. And when the court came through, and had been in jail for a year, waiting for the preliminary hearing for murder, first-degree murder. I don't believe there's bail in Philadelphia. So she had to wait for the year, and she was very nervous. She wanted to see her children. DeCipio was very sympathetic about her being a mother, very good mother to her kids. When the day of the verdict was read, she was anxious as everybody else, but DeCipio, you can tell, was shocked when they come forth with the first-degree murder, and the judge had to give a mandatory life sentence. So she's hysterical. She just kept yelling, my kids, my kids, my kids, what am I going to do? So and even now, even if they did knock it down to 15 and 30, yes, she's going to get out. And I guess even the youngest, I think at the time the youngest was 4. So you figure it's still going to be 20 years old minimum. And if she gets out exactly 15 years. So that stinks for her, for just that issue, for her being the mother of the children. So she was crying, and then she was led away. And apparently when because it was a very much divided courtroom. Keisha was on one side, the Taylor family was on the other, and in fact, when she walked in, the Taylor family was like screaming. They were screaming obscenities at her. They were pissed. So the courtroom was very much divided. And they weren't, I don't see any interviews with them. It's probably very hard for them to get past this. But the one thing that stuck with me is when they were in the courtroom, the dad, Tyrone Taylor's dad, some of the family of Tyrone Taylor started clapping that she had gotten first-degree murder and everything. And Tyrone Taylor's dad put up his hand, said, no, there will be none of that. Because not only, I might agree with the verdict, but my son is still dead, and the kids have no mother. So that's true. I mean, that is a very ambiguous situation to be in, that you were happy with the outcome, but yet it sucks all the way around. I mean, Tyrone Taylor's dead. Keisha Jones is in jail. The kids have no mother. I think the dad of Tyrone Taylor got custody of the children, who are grown now. I wanted to go through that case with you guys. This is the first case with my new equipment, so you got to bear with me. It's going to grow. We're growing, and with all growth is painful change. So bear with me. This is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Shoe. That doesn't match. Come on, I got something funky. God, guys, I can't find Nelson. Well, this is Gabby Q, and you're listening to The Right Show. Woo! Bring it on home, Sally. Don't worry, we'll get it back to where it used to be. Oh. I'm trying to figure out what sound to send it with. I'll get there. This is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Show. What do you want to eat? Okay, yeah, this is Debbie Q, and you're listening to, yes, The Right Shoe. You haven't got swayed the wrong way. You're not in the wrong zone. And this mic is driving me insane. Hello? 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 Hi. Hey, this is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Shoe. The Right Shoe is a podcast. I don't know where the fuck that's... I don't know. This is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Shoe. The Right Shoe is a podcast about all things strange and unusual, especially when it references a death. This is going to make me crazy. I gotta find a way that I got the microphone. I feel like I can hear my blood curdling. Maybe I don't need that. And this is Debbie Shue fucking around with my microphone. I think I like it like this, but I'm not sure. How do I sound? Tonight we're going to talk about the death of Tyrone Taylor. He was killed by his wife, Keisha Jones. What happened that night? It's a mystery. So get ready. Get set. And let's rock.